Jones goes down. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the game, Cadero. Oh, Darnell Mooney inside the 10. Oh, and it's intercepted. Kane Ellis the pick. Striding out, Jesse. Touchdown, Atlanta. No chance. Oh my gosh. Oh my heavens.
All right, well, we welcome you guys to the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster. It's week 16. We've only got 3 more weeks left in the regular season, and the Falcons are on the road taking on the Arizona Cardinals, hoping to get some back-to-back wins late in this season. Again, thank you guys for joining us. Taylor Vismor. We have a familiar face, but on our regular face next to me today, Will McFadden, who is really like the host of most all of the podcasts. Like, he is the podcast extraordinaire here with the Falcons. So, Will, thank you for being here. It's going to be a fun show with you today.
Heck yeah, excited always. I feel like I'm the lead substitute teacher whenever Rack is out.
Yes.
I get to step in. It's always a blast, so thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, so like he said, Rack is out today. I hope he is resting up today, and we will see him next week as we take on the Rams for Monday Night Football. But we've got a game to talk about today in the Arizona Cardinals. And before we get to that, last week, Falcons found a win down in Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers, defeating them 29-28, only by 1 point. This game has, in the last couple of seasons, has been such an exciting game to watch for the NFC South. But going into that game, Rackley and I talked about how the Falcons had an opportunity to kind of spoil the NFC South a little bit. Well, they did. Like I said, they beat the Buccaneers 29-28. And then the Saints, they beat the Carolina Panthers last week. So not a lot of spoiling happening because the exact same thing happened. They're now tied at number 1 in the NFC South. They're actually playing each other right now, so I don't know what the final score is yet, but they are playing in that 1 o'clock window, the Carolina Panthers and the Buccaneers. But kind of talking about this game last week, we spoke about the spoiler and trying to play spoiler. Looking at this game, right? This is an NFC West game. They're last in the West. What is the purpose and what is the emotion going into this game trying to get a win today for the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, at the bottom, or at the end of the day, these guys are professionals, right? Like, you're out here, you're always fighting for your job. You're always looking to put your best on tape, because if it may not be here in Atlanta, it's going to be hopefully somewhere else in the NFL for anybody on this roster. But a lot of them are hoping it is still here in Atlanta and that they are building something. And that is kind of like the competitors that I have ever been around. When they're at the highest level, a lot of them hate to lose more than they like winning. And so at the end of the day, I do think pride is kind of on the line. And you look at the Cardinals. This is a team that came into 2025 with high aspirations. Like, they were one of the more interesting teams, I think, in 2024. They felt like that was a stepping stone to this season. And they have been in so many close games that this is a little bit of a barometer for the Atlanta Falcons, I think, as they look towards 2026 and beyond and what you're building. This is a really good measuring stick game, so I expect their best, and they're looking to stack wins to close out the season.
Yeah, you mentioned about the Cardinals that they had a really interesting 2024 season, and I think where the Falcons sit now, it didn't really pan out that way, but I think kind of when you're looking towards motivation, it's for the guys like a Drake London, a Bijan Robinson, a Michael Penix even, who are guys that are going to continue to be on this team moving down the line. Even a Jesse Bates on the defense, and a Billy Bowman Jr. and a Xavier Watson, and I can kind of go down the list. It's not just about winning games and getting good tape on your reel, if you will. It's about creating a culture in this organization of, we're not just going to give up just because things don't go our way, and just because we're not in the playoffs doesn't mean that we can't create a culture here to sustain us into the 2026, 2027, and on in those seasons. We're here now, and we're going to be here for a while, so we might as well create a culture of, just because things aren't going our way, we're not going to sit out, we're not going to pout, we're going to keep playing, we're going to keep being leaders. But that all, of course, starts today as they take on the Arizona Cardinals. And lots of things, like you mentioned, Will, not the season that they were wanting. They are 3-11. They are on a 6-game losing streak entering week 16. They've had 7 losses in 1-score games. And over the entire season, they've had 9 1-score games overall. So, of course, 2 of them, is that right math? 2 wins of 1-score games.
Yeah,
I'm a journalist.
2 and 7.
I'm not a mathematician, all right? But the last 2 games that they have played in week 15 and week 14 have kind of been these big blowout losses by 20 or more points. The point differential for the last 2 weeks, negative 48 points for this Cardinals team. So not the season that they were looking to have in 2025, especially in the stacked NFC West division that they have this year. What do you make about the Arizona Cardinals coming into Week 16?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned their division, right? And I think that is where you should start, because when we mention kind of how they looked before their bye at the beginning of the season, they were playing teams like the Rams, the Seahawks, the 49ers, very, very close. That is the caliber of kind of overall roster that the Arizona Cardinals have. The last couple of weeks, I think injuries have really taken a toll, on top of maybe just, you know, the morale of the unit kind of starts to go down once the writing is on the wall. And that is where, when we kind of flip back to what's in it for Atlanta, it is two teams that are looking to see kind of, it's a gut check a little bit, right? Like, what are we made of? Are we able to bring it when we don't have anything else to play for? And so we'll get into this a little bit, but some of those injuries, I think it's going to be a big day for Atlanta's defensive line and their fronts, and how they impact this game, because Arizona is a very pass-happy offense. They love to move the ball. They've got some big names on defense. Calais Campbell, you know, a familiar face here as well. So there's going to be a lot of big names in this game, but I think that overall Arizona is capable. They just haven't played consistently this season.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier in the week when we were kind of having our pre-production meetings, and I do want to ask you about it because I thought it was a really good point. Yes, they have had injuries, and we will talk about those injuries really soon. But before that, you mentioned they've had all these close games, 9 one-score games, win or lose. 7 of them have been losses, but one-score games nonetheless. You said it's a really well-coached team, in my opinion, because they're close games. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, in this league, a lot of times, you know, you have games that evolve in certain ways, right? And understanding what game you're in and how to then play that game, I think, is very important in this league. And so if you're finding out that you're in a low-score game, all right, do we have the players that are able to execute that game plan, and can we pivot to a game plan like that? So I think Jonathan Gannon, what he has done as head coach, he's brought in some really good assistants. I do like the staff ultimately that they've been able to have there. And really just adapting in-game, I think, has been a strength of the Cardinals. I think at times it's been a strength of the Atlanta Falcons as well. So there could be a chess match here. This league does beget one-score games, but when you're playing in a lot of those, you are also doing something right. Yeah. And so I think that even though the Cardinals' record is what it is, this is not a team that anybody should be overlooking.
I agree, and we mentioned the injuries a couple of times already, so let's go ahead and talk about these, because the 2 biggest names on this team, they've been out for a while now. Kyler Murray has been out since week 6. He's only played the first 5 games of the season, has not returned. He is on IR and will be there for the remainder of the season. Marvin Harrison Jr., however, he's been out for weeks on weeks, it seems like. He will return today, so we will talk about him ad nauseum in just a second, but I do want to start with Kyler Murray and this quarterback situation, because as we know, in the National Football League, you are only as good as your quarterback. So the quarterback no longer is Kyler Murray. It is Jacoby Brissett. He will get the start today. He's been starting since week 6, and he's had a pretty good season as the backup quarterback. Now, this guy, he's a journeyman, right? He's been to 7 different teams in 9 seasons, 6 different teams in 6 years. What do we know about Jacoby Brissett? Because 6 teams in 6 years, you're thinking, well, he just signs these one-year deals, right? To me, it says he is enough of a weapon as a secondary, as a backup quarterback, to where all of these teams want him to back up whoever their QB1 is. What's exciting to you about Jacoby Brissett?
I mean, to me, it means that he knows ball, right? Like, to me, that means that he's adding value, not just on the field, but in the meeting rooms, in the quarterback room. He started his career in New England, right? He learned from Tom Brady, from Josh McDaniels, from one of the best kind of offensive infrastructures of their era. And if you look at what Arizona has been since he took over, they've been a pass-first offense. Yeah. Even without their number 1 receiver in the lineup in Marvin Harrison Jr. at times. I mean, Jacoby Brissett has the most passing yards in the NFL since he became a starter in week 6. That is crazy. He has the 2nd most passing touchdowns in the NFL since he became a starter in week 6. So this is going to be an offense that drops back a lot. What you're losing in Jacoby Brissett is some of that mobility that Kyler Murray brings, but what you're gaining in him is a more steady presence who's able to probably diagnose a little bit pre-snap what exactly a defense is looking at, get the ball out of his hands quickly and effectively, and really kind of move the ball and matriculate it down the field. Maybe not so many explosive plays, but I don't think you're going to see the Cardinals kind of have too many unforced errors with Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, what's so interesting about Jacoby Brissett and Kyler Murray is that they are two kind of different style quarterbacks. And I think that kind of happens a lot in this league, where you have one quarterback that's a little bit more, let me run out of the pocket, let me make something out of nothing. And then you have someone like a Jacoby Brissett that's like, if it's not there, I'm just going to throw it out and we're going to try again, we're going to re-rack, and we're going to go again. And I think what you're seeing in these two, obviously this is over this season, what you're seeing right now. And obviously Murray only 5 games played, with Brissett 11 games played. But just, I mean, I think the biggest thing here that you can look at, and I don't think it's on this graphic, is just the rushing yards in particular. Let me see if I can find it. Kyler Murray had 173 rushing yards in only 5 games played, and Brissett in 11 has 144 rushing yards. So like you have said, he is going to look to pass first and really pass only, unless it is a designed run play for Jacoby Brissett, which probably isn't happening a ton. So why is it tricky for defenses to go from learning a Kyler Murray prototype quarterback to now we've got to play a Jacoby Brissett prototype quarterback?
Yeah, it specifically kind of changes how you approach the pass rush, right? When you have more of a scrambler, you're going to want to maybe box them in, keep that spy, and rush as a unit, so you don't leave any kind of gaps or lanes for somebody to step up and out on. With Jacoby Brissett, I think you want more interior pressure. Yeah. So somebody like Brandon Dorless, maybe Zach Harrison, if you were going to play him on the edge, maybe you slide him inside. He's got that kind of dual ability. I would look at Rukaroro as well. Obviously, we want to see James Pierce Jr. keep going. We want to see Jalen Walker and Leonard Floyd get theirs, but I'm looking at more your A gaps, your B gaps, and can you get pressure right in his face? Yeah. And then on the outside, because he likes to get the ball out quickly, let's jam the receivers. Let's throw off some of that timing, get hands on Michael Wilson, on Marvin Harrison Jr., and kind of disrupt that flow a little bit and make Jacoby Brissett hold the ball a little bit. Yeah, well,
Brissett, like we have said, he has been a journeyman 7 teams over the last 9 seasons, and he's backed up Kyler Murray this year, and everyone has seen him as a backup quarterback, but defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich doesn't see him as a backup at all.
God, it just, every time he comes in, it's like, okay, we got the backup quarterback, you know. He's not a backup quarterback. He's just not. You know, he's a guy that just, I think he's been in so many systems, and he's been in so many buildings that I think he understands defense at such a high level. You see it, and it's just so consistent on the tape. I was showing the fellas this morning, like, if you are off a centimeter, like, he's going to find the crack, you know, and he's going to make you pay for it.
All right, so like we were talking about earlier, he's going to make you pay for it, is what Jeff Ulbrich is saying right there. And he's going to make you pay for it in the pass, because he's got some receivers, like we mentioned earlier. Marvin Harrison Jr. will get a start today. He will be back on the field after being inactive for a couple of weeks. And man, this guy is not just a wide receiver one, he's the unequivocal wide receiver one. He's the unequivocal pass rush, or pass catcher one, right? He is the main name on this Arizona Cardinals offense. What makes Marvin Harrison so dangerous, but also so fun to watch?
Yeah, I mean, you start right there. Like, he's a quintessential X wide receiver, right? Like, the Falcons got to see it for so long in Julio Jones. He's not as quite maybe physically imposing, but he is fast, quick, agile, great hands, can go deep, can kind of like out-muscle a defender. He really does have the whole package, and I still think we are waiting to see him fully like explode onto the scene the way everybody was expecting when he was coming out of Ohio State, right? If you think back to the draft, it was just kind of like, it's clearly Marvin Harrison Jr., and then we'll have the conversation about all the other wide receivers, right? So he is that entire package. And if you're Atlanta, I'm looking at maybe, early on, how effective is he? How is he coming off of injury? Is he 100% back? And then, do we need to bracket, right? Do we have A.J. Terrell kind of shadow him and help him over top of Jesse Bates or Xavier Watts? Do they have A.J. Terrell shadow him, as he has a couple of times this season? Obviously, with my Q's out for Atlanta, that's going to be a big deal, is who exactly do you want to have on the various Arizona receivers? I would expect A.J. to be pretty heavily on Marvin Harrison Jr. That's not to discount what Michael Wilson has done on the other side, but he is really kind of a pure wide receiver in the sense of he can do it all. We haven't seen him move inside too much the way Drake London does, So it'll be on the outside, those vertical balls, the deep shots that Jacoby Brissett likes to do. And then I would look for a couple of slants, see if they can get him in space and maybe some yards after the catch.
Yeah, what's interesting about what you just said is we don't know how active he will be today, how many snaps he's going to get. But he was actually inactive week 11, 12, came back for week 13, and then missed the last 2 weeks of the regular season with a heel injury. But you mentioned Michael Wilson, so I want to bring him up because it kind of coincides with the question of how active will Marvin Harrison Jr. be today. Obviously, when Jr. is not in there, Michael Wilson is your wide receiver number one, and his stats really show that. And I think he is averaging, let me see, I have it right here. He's averaging 12.5 receptions per game when Harrison Jr. is not starting. It's a lot of receptions per game. When he does start, though, he averages 2.5 receptions a game. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're coming off of an illness or a heel injury, whatever it might be. Whenever Marvin Harrison Jr. is in the starting package, whenever he's in any offensive package period, they are looking for Marvin Harrison Jr. first and then Michael Wilson. But speaking of Michael Wilson, because he is wide receiver 2 at this current juncture, you can't discount him for what he's able to do because he has racked up a lot of receiving yards without Marvin Harrison Jr. being on the field. You mentioned that Mike Hughes will not be playing today. He will be inactive for week 16. When you hear those two names and knowing what both of them can do, how do you cover both of these guys as they get the week 16 going here?
Yeah, I mean, so Michael Wilson, since week 11, right, when Marvin Harrison Jr. has kind of missed the bulk of his time, he's second in receiving yards, right? Yeah. He's first in targets, first in receptions. So this is an offense that is kind of wide receiver dominant with one wide receiver. So I'm curious to see how has Michael Wilson's performance in recent weeks changed the trust level with the overall offense and with Jacoby Brissett. Is it going to still be very single wide receiver oriented, and that wide receiver today is Marvin Harrison Jr., or has that evolved to the point where he says, okay, I've got two guys now that I can trust? That gets to a little bit more of the pre-snap. I'm diagnosing, all right, AJ is on Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's see what Michael Wilson's working with over here. And that's where I think Atlanta is going to be well served to maybe disguise some of their coverages. Again, kind of throw off some of the timing so it's not a clear pre-snap read for the quarterback. But Michael Wilson is more than capable as a number 2 wide receiver. The last thing you want to do is let both of them kind of start getting in a rhythm. So at the very least, I would shut one of them down and try to force it to being more of that single wide receiver offense that they like.
Yeah, I think what has stood out to me about Michael Wilson is when you get these opportunities, Rackley and I have talked about it a lot this season, when you get opportunities as that second wide receiver or just second string, whatever position you have, and you make a name for yourself and you say, I'm actually invaluable to this offense or defense, whatever side of the ball that you're on, it creates this level of understanding with the quarterback, right? I trust you because I know that when I need you to rise to the occasion, I need you to make a big play, you're going to do that. So I am interested today and moving forward for the Arizona Cardinals, what the relationship between Brissett and Wilson will be moving forward with Harrison Jr. now on the field with him. Again, it's going to be interesting, but you did mention Wilson is second in receiving yards since Marvin Harrison Jr. has been out, first in receiving yards. I mean, he's top 10 in receiving yards, period. He's only tight end top 10 receiving yards. That's Trey McBride. He is probably the best tight end in the NFL right now. He's just been on a tear recently. This guy, he is one of the bigger, bright spots of this offense and of this team in general. Why is Trey McBride so great at his job and what makes him so lethal for defenses?
Yeah, he's just kind of the quintessential modern day tight end in that he combines kind of the savviness as a route runner, as a receiver of your, Travis Kelce's, of your Darren Wallers, of your Evan Ingrams, like that type of just can move around, like think Jason Witten or Greg Olsen back in the day, right? But then he is also a really good blocker who allows Arizona to keep him on the field for every play, which then enhances their offensive kind of deception, right? Because when you are able to kind of keep that same personnel grouping out there and then, all right, we got a play action pass, but boom, Trey McBride is blocking, goes out on the flat. He is so effective with the ball in his hands that he can turn a short yard gain into a long gain, and he can also run the offense through him, right? So he is a volume receiver who can catch 9 passes and you feel really good about giving him those 9 shots with the ball. And he can make explosive plays happen. So he really is just kind of that all-around package He's number 1 in receiving yards, as you mentioned, so it is going to be a huge, huge challenge for Atlanta's defense. But I kind of think that they've got a secret weapon of their own against him.
I agree, and we'll get to that in just a second. You said he's number 1 in receiving yards for the Arizona Cardinals, and I don't want to get too stat heavy, but like the stats are insane for a tight end. It's just something that you don't see. These are wide receiver numbers that he has right now. He's 6th in the league in receiving yards, 1st in receptions, and 2nd in targets. He has 10 receiving touchdowns this season alone. He's just a weapon. So like you mentioned, there's someone special that the Falcons will need to call on to help stop him. Divine Diablo, of course. Why is Divine the right guy to kind of put on McBride to make sure that he's shut down for the majority of the game today?
I mean, first off, the length that Divine Diablo is like the first thing that jumped out when he arrived before the season, right? In training camp, it was just the length. We saw that on display. I think it was Buffalo, where he, had that kind of like no-look, bat the ball down pass. He is among linebackers with at least 200 coverage snaps. He's the fewest number of completions allowed this season. He's only allowed 11 completions in his coverage, only 3 to tight ends, right? And he is mostly matched up against tight ends. He's a little bit of their tight end eraser, as Caden Ellis likes to be a jack of all trades in the pass rush, kind of against running backs, all of that. He has the lowest target rate, which to me means that he is blanketing and really taking away that option to the point where quarterbacks aren't even really looking his way. And he is number 1 in hawk percentage, which means when the ball is in the air, whether it's a batted down pass, an interception, which is kind of hard to do with the club on his arm right now as he still recovers from that broken forearm. But he is just so effective in so many ways defensively for Atlanta. And he has been, in my opinion, kind of the definition of an unsung hero, because we're not talking about him because offenses can't do anything in his direction because he's just taking that element away. So he's a little bit of kind of like the best player we don't talk about on Atlanta's defense.
Yeah, what's funny is that he might be an unsung hero for the fans, but I can pretty much guarantee you that for these offenses, when they are getting ready and they're doing scout team coverage, they got those little jerseys that have numbers on them. They got number 0 every single week when they're taking on the Falcons because they're trying to figure out what Diablo can do. And when you talk about him, covering Trey McBride and staying on Trey McBride for the majority of the game, people really do forget that he was a safety at one point, and that was like his bread and butter. And who blocks safety, or who blocks tight ends most of the time? Safeties. He knows what he's doing when it comes to tight ends, and it's going to be exciting to see this one-on-one matchup and see if it is a one-on-one matchup for the majority of the game today, and how the Cardinals are going to try to work around Divine, because Trey McBride is such a major, major piece for this offense. But speaking of matchups, something that I want to talk about is this wide receiver core for the Falcons. Drake London will return today for the Falcons for the first time since the Carolina game back, what was that, like over a month ago. It seems like millenniums ago. Drake London will be back as wide receiver 1, and their matchups to watch today. I mean, the secondary for the Cardinals versus this receiving core. Of course, they have Budda Baker, Will Johnson, Garrett Williams, just a couple of names on this secondary team. Why is it important to have Drake London back when you hear those names, those young names in this NFL defense that they have that have become NFL major names?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, starting with Budda Baker, right? Like, he is somebody, former Washington player, who really high draft pick, was a lot of people, or a player a lot of people I think in Atlanta wanted when he was coming out of the draft, and for good reason, because he has that hybrid, versatile mindset as a safety, which is essential in today's NFL. So he is going to be all over the field for Arizona, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him matched up against Drake London, against David Sills, against Kyle Pitts, against Bijan Robinson, like everybody. But when you look at kind of the injuries that I was talking about earlier, I would say the offensive line, running back, and the secondary. That's kind of where they have been most impactful. You're going to be without starting cornerback Max Melton if you're the Arizona Cardinals. You're also going to be without your safety Jalen Thompson. And so what that means at corner specifically, you could have 2 rookies starting on the outside. Will Johnson, 2nd-round pick, and then Denzel Burke, 5th-round pick. So regardless of kind of Drake London's status, and we all know how much of a fighter he is, right? So if he is out there, I expect him to give it his 100%. But coming off a PCL injury, like, just how strong is that knee? How effective will he be? That remains to be seen. But his presence alone, I think, is going to draw the attention of Arizona's secondary away from ultimately Kyle Pitts, who is on quite a tear right now, and then your other options like Darnell Mooney and David Sills. I know the Falcons would still love to get Darnell Mooney going. David Sills has proven that he can be clutch. Last week, that was a big-time catch on 4th down. So I think the Falcons will still try to move the ball around, spread it around, but Drake London's presence is going to be big today.
It's going to be big not just for this offense, but for Kirk Cousins especially, because over the last couple of weeks that he has been starting, it's kind of been an up and down ride because Kirk Cousins is trying to find his footing again as a starting quarterback, and man, did he find it last week against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he just has their number in general, but finding consistency for Kirk has been something that he's talked a lot about, and finding rhythm with this offense again, trying to figure out how to call the offense and make sure everyone's cadence is right and just be the leader that he needs to be for the rest of this offense. And look at this. Also shout out to our graphics team. They've been killing it recently.
Heck yeah.
I love this graphic because it shows you that he starts to find it, and then of course with the Seattle Seahawks, kind of lost it again, but then last week bounced back and said, I'm not done. We got a couple more games left and we're going to find my footing. We are going to find how to be a better rhythmic offense. So what have you seen from Kirk Cousins last week, but then just over the last couple of weeks that he's been starting for this Falcons overall?
Yeah, you mentioned Tampa Bay. Over the last couple of years, I don't think there is a quarterback that has more passing yards against a single team than Kirk does against Tampa Bay. So we talk about Kyle Pitts and kind of what he has done against Tampa. What about Kirk Cousins and what he has done against Tampa? Really, it was just that Seattle game, right? That was kind of the one down note, I think, since he took over in Week 12 as the starter. He has the 6th most passing yards in the NFL among quarterbacks since he took over. So I do think you have seen a little bit more consistency from the passing game. I think you have seen the offense spreading the ball around a little bit more. Obviously, him now a year removed from kind of that Achilles has allowed him, I think, to do more things in the pocket mobility-wise. And just honestly, coming in a second year with an offense, you have a better understanding and a grasp, right? How many times did we hear kind of in that quarterback Netflix documentary, him talking about the number of motions that Zach Robinson's offense had? And I love the motions. I don't want him to take the motions out, but I would like for Kirk now in year 2 to probably be really comfortable with those motions, with organizing and directing the offense. And that is what we've seen, right? You don't have kind of a performance like he did against Tampa Bay without a full command and understanding and comfort of the offense. So Kirk has really stepped up nicely, I think, as a backup here.
Yeah, so excited to see how Kirk kind of responds today after that monumentous game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if you will. Drake London obviously back, excited to see him. But there are some other guys on this offense that we've kind of talked about the last couple of weeks since Drake London has been out that we're excited to see more from today. So, I'm going to let you start. You've got a wide receiver that you want to see a little bit more from today. Who is it?
Yeah, I'd love to see more from David Sills, right? I think that 4th down catch hopefully was the beginning of something, right? We saw in training camp that the chemistry, the connection with Kirk Cousins was building. We've seen him get his first 2 career touchdown passes here with Kirk, but I want to see if he can maintain that role in that offense with now Drake London coming back, right? How does that flow work out? Can you get Darnell? Can you get Kyle Pitts? Can you get Drake? And is there then still room for David Sills? And what has that chemistry afforded him? So I really do want to see more from him, not just today, over the next couple of weeks, to see, all right, is he going to be part of this team maybe moving forward?
Yeah, I think Michael Wilson, like we talked about earlier, is kind of a good example of what David Sills has been like for this Atlanta Falcons offense. You asked, Marvin Harrison Jr., he steps out, Michael Wilson steps up, Drake London leaves the game of Carolina, and of course, David Sills steps up, has a couple of touchdowns along the way, back-to-back weeks with touchdowns. It's just been really fun, and I think what you've seen with David Sills, like you mentioned with Kirk Cousins, they have this continuity with each other because they've been working with each other since training camp on the 2s and trying to figure out how to be better for this team and to be better as the 2s. But when their names were called, they stepped up to the occasion. I think David Sills has been a great addition to this offense and these pass catchers in general. For me, someone that I want to see more from is Kyle Pitts. I mean, he's a number 4 overall pick for a reason. He can do just about anything. Everyone calls him the unicorn, and obviously last week he had a monumental game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Week for Week 15. Over the last 3 weeks, though, this is really what I want to talk about. Over the last 3 weeks, he has had 80 or more yards every single week, and they have grown 82, 90, 166. It has been awesome. Never before this week in this season has he had 80 or more yards in a singular game, and now he has 3 in a row. Just incredible. When his name was called upon to step up and be a starter that the coaching staff knew that he could be. Kyle Pitts has done that. Obviously, last week had 3 touchdowns. He's only had 4 all year. 3 of them come from 1 game alone, and he said, look, Florida air, it's just special to me. I can play really well in Florida, and that he did. I'm hoping that Kyle Pitts has another big game today. And look, he had a great game last week. I've been singing his praises about 166 yards, 3 touchdowns, and so our DJ Shockley went back into the film room to talk about why Kyle Pitts had such a great game. DJ?
What's up, guys? We are talking about the guy that everybody calls the unicorn, a guy that linebackers, DB, safety, maybe your mama. Nobody can cover this dude because of the size, the athleticism, but also the mental capacity he has to run routes like a receiver, but also use that big athletic frame to get open and use his body to go get footballs like this one. This is an inside fade here. He does such a good job, I think, at holding the point on this particular inside fade here. This guy wants to reroute him here. This linebacker, or safety, whoever he is, he wants to reroute him to get him and force him to the sideline, but does a good job of fighting it at the point of attack. So here, he's at maybe the top of this route. This guy's still flat-footed. That's because at the top of it, he gave him an inside-outside move that he wasn't sure which way he was going to go. Kyle set him up really well. Now, the next part is what's most important is holding the point here. See this guy fighting him? He's fighting him at the top of his route, trying to force him further to the sideline. But Kyle does such a good job of fighting him and keeping his point right here to stay vertical, because it also gives all this room right here for his quarterback to catch for Kyle to catch the football and lay it. Look where this ball is. You can see the ball. The ball is already in the air, almost there. Kirk does a good job of anticipating it. That means he has ultimate trust in KP to throw this football a little bit early. And KP knows what spot to go to. And you watch him go up and get this football, and it's an unbelievable job. You can see him high pointed, late hands. Hands are not even up yet. 2 guys trying to come over. And you see he ends up coming down with this football, 1 cheek, 1 elbow, equals a touchdown. Using it, he hold his point, then using athleticism, but also the strength to hold his point. Ultimately, you get a touchdown. Let's look at one more play here. This was a big play, I thought, in the ball game. Big 3rd and 7 here. He's got a smaller defensive back on him. It's 3rd and 7. You're going to see him come off, then he's going to come on, and then he uses his frame to get inside here. You see here, this guy wants to play him outside leverage, but also inside. Kyle does a good job of winning to the inside, and then you're going to see him get vertical. This is the best part about it. He gets vertical, and then the most important part is once he gets to the top of this, he comes flat down the line and puts this little defensive back on his back and comes up with a big-time play here. Comes across, and then the last part of it that makes him so special, talked about the nuances at the top of his route, being physical during the route, but then there's something about what happens when the ball's in the air that makes him even more special. Going up and get the football, high pointed, coming down with it, 3rd and 7, 1st down, Falcons. Kyle Pitts can continue to do these little small nuances with the extreme athleticism that he has. Forget about it. Not sure many people in this league can cover him, and that's why he was a top 10 pick.
All right, DJ, he wasn't just a top 10 pick. He was number 4. He was top 5 pick. Like, put some respect on my friend's name. Obviously, huge game for him, and he's special, like you said. Such a special player, and he said in the post-game interviews, it's something about Florida and the Florida air. I played here. I played really well here, and when I get back in the Florida air, it's just special, and I love being back down here. So speaking of that Florida air and being back where you belong, Bijan Robinson returning home to Arizona today. Maybe some Arizona air will help him. Why are you so excited to see him play against the Cardinals today?
Arizona, not Arizona. I don't think it really matters too much when it comes to Bijan Robinson. Like, he is special regardless of the state that he is in. I expect a big day for Bijan Robinson, right? I think when you are kind of in a matchup where it could get ugly, and I think the other team would benefit from trying to slow this game down, like drag you down to their level, because I do think the Falcons come into this kind of a little bit more polished, a little bit more well-rounded with what they can do. I think you give the ball to Bijan, you let him dictate the pace early. If you look at the Cardinals specifically on defense, they're allowing the 8th most rushing yards on outside runs this season. That is where the Falcons butter their bread in the run game.
Yeah.
It is that outside zone, and although they have hit some big plays up the middle, I would expect them really to lean on what Bijan does best, which is see the hole, bounce it, create those creases, make 2 guys miss, keep it going. So I would expect Bijan to be really, really involved. First drive, yeah, I want to see Tyler Algier get his.
Thank you.
But I would still give the ball to number 7 as often as possible, and not just as a runner. As a receiver, he's averaging 8.4 yards per target this season, which is 3rd among running backs with at least 25 targets. So Bijan, that was a goal of his coming into the season, was to be more well-rounded as a receiver. I'd like to see he and Kirk get on the same page with some of the option routes that they were off the same page on last week against Tampa. So that'll be a sign of improvement that we could look for. But expect number 7 to get the ball early and often in this one.
Yeah, I think for this Falcons team, we've talked about it a lot over the course of the pregame show about how important it is for the Falcons and this offense to establish the run early and often and let them not forget, yes, we have Bijan Robinson who can be a running back but can also be a wide receiver. And then when they start to forget about Tyler Algier, throw him in there, let him get down the field a little bit more as well. So the running backs is going to be really exciting to watch today. But as we mentioned, the inactives report wasn't super exciting for either one of these teams. And what was exciting was the guys that they are getting back. Like we mentioned, Drake London will return from the Falcons after being inactive since the Carolina game. Marvin Harrison Jr. will also return for the Cardinals. So some wide receivers returning. Obviously, Mike Hughes for the Falcons will be inactive today, and we've seen that inactive the last couple of weeks as well and what happens. And I think Kobe Bryant has kind of filled in pretty well for Mike Hughes in the absence of Mike Hughes. And then a couple of corners for the Cardinals as well will be out, which you have already mentioned. But before we wrap up the show, let's go ahead and get to the keys to the game presented by Wells Fargo. Rackley is not here today, and I didn't want to throw you in the fire too much. So I'm actually going to do 2 keys, so no preference from me today. It's going to be 2 keys, and then Will is going to wrap it up with one of his. So we're going to start just dabbling you in the keys to the game. So obviously, first key to the game today is going to be to limit penalties. It was a major issue last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had 19 penalties. It was the most allowed penalties by an NFL team in 9 years. 9 years. That is absurd. 19 penalties. It felt like last week, whenever you were watching it, it just felt like every other play there was a flag, there was a penalty for just things that could be avoided, and those are momentum stoppers. They don't help, and over the last 3 weeks, it's progressively gotten worse for this Falcons team. Obviously, against the Jets, they only had 1 penalty. Then they played the Seattle Seahawks. They had 8 penalties, and then last week against the Buccaneers, they had 19 penalties. So we got to bring that back down to 1 penalty or 0 penalties because those are big momentum stoppers. Second key to the game today is going to be, speaking of momentum, let's get some momentum plays going here. Obviously, like I mentioned, penalties will stop the momentum, but what can help momentum is chunk plays. Yes, those 20-yard receptions for Kyle Pitts, for David Sills, and Drake London, and even the 20-yard runs for Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. I know that Rack normally talks about momentum plays being huge chunk plays to get down the field and flip the field quickly. But for me, I think momentum plays is buildable plays. We want to have a 5-yard reception, a 7-yard reception, a 5-yard run. Just keep moving the field down and keep moving the ball down the field a little bit. Create that momentum throughout the game instead of having this huge chunk play and then a penalty to bring it back 10 more yards. I think building momentum today is going to be a major key to this game to keep the Arizona Cardinals off the field longer and keep this offense on the field just consistently building momentum, consistently getting down the field today. So obviously, those are my first 2 keys. You've got the third one. What is your third and final key today?
Yeah, you got to stack those wins, right?
Yes.
And I think I like what you're saying about momentum, right? Because we can start small and then get big, because limiting penalties is a great way to build momentum on those drives. Having those momentum plays lead to hopefully explosive plays that win you the game. And now you need to build momentum as you end the season, right? You won last week against Tampa Bay. Now you have a chance to do something for only the second time this season. The Falcons only have won back-to-back games once this year against Buffalo and Washington, right?
That was with a bye in the
and
middle.
they had a bye week in the middle, right? So good teams stack wins.
Yeah.
When you look at playoff teams each and every year, you can usually find a stretch, if not multiple, in their schedule where it's 3 wins, 4 wins. You really want to avoid that win-loss, win-loss, win-loss that the Falcons have been in over the last 3 or 4 years. So really, to me, it's about how you finish this season. That was kind of Raheem Morris's message all week long. It's win these games, stack these wins, and head into the offseason with a little bit of momentum.
Yes, momentum is great, and I think we mentioned it in the beginning of the show. It's not just about building a film for your tape or whatever you want to call it and making all these great plays for yourself, but it's also creating a culture moving down the line, looking towards the 2026 season. Yes, the playoffs are not, Falcons are not in playoff contention this year, but moving down the line, stacking some wins down the stretch here with the last couple of games left to play, you can create a culture of we're not going to give up, we're going to stack wins, and this is what we're going to have moving forward. This is what we're going to strive for moving forward because we know that we can do it even when playoffs are not in the future for us for this season. So, Will, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Next week we will be back in Mercedes-Benz Stadium with Rackley back across from me. But, Will, again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really fun. The Cardinals and the Falcons will take on each other today on Fox starting at 4:05. And then next week, like I said, Monday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams, on ESPN. It's going to be fun. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to all of you. We hope you have a fabulous holiday week coming up. And quick question before we go. Favorite holiday movie? He likes to do all these questions on the podcast. If you don't listen to him, if you listen to him, you would know.
Yeah, but I ask him. I don't answer.
Well, today you're in the hot seat.
Oh
I'm the host. You're not. So, favorite holiday movie? Go.
The Grinch, Jim Carrey version.
Wow. All right.
Absolutely.
There you go. Mine's Home Alone. Let me know yours down in the comments, and we will see you next week. Bye, guys.